Welcome in, everybody, to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast powered by the FFWC. My name is Billy, your host. Joined with me, as always, is my co-host, Jody Smith. And tonight, we're going to be breaking down our tight end sleepers and fades for the 2022 season. Jody, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Doing okay. Billy, just talk a little bit before the air, before we hit the studio here about the Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. So if there's some issues on my end, then you'll have to surge forward and we'll deal with it.
The show must go on. We'll continue. We'll power forward. Well, while we got you, let's go ahead and run through your first tight end sleeper pick or someone that you think is going to present himself a value when it comes to 2022 drafts and is going to outproduce his ADP.
Well, I thought it was important. First off, as you know, for the last, better part of the last 2 weeks has been very labor intensive for me writing projections. And then, you and I, Billy, and circled back and went through some things. But what I discovered in my knowledge and looking at things was tight end was pretty much, it feels like the expert consensus out there is pretty spot on. There's some variance here and there, but for the most part, what I'm seeing is what a lot of the experts and a lot of the other analysts and others are seeing. And Billy, I specifically remember you as we took our first recap of the rankings. You said, other than, a couple of little things here and there, tight end's pretty spot on. And then, we also hit on how the depth at tight end, like when you miss, you're obviously, if you miss the elite 4 or 5 guys, that it's pretty deep in that regard. So with that in mind, it wasn't really easy for me to find, big names that I would go out of my way to avoid, or guys that I feel like, are must target at this point. Like anything else, it's good to have some exposure to some guys and not to completely fade everyone and all that. But so as I was looking at, guys that I'm kind of higher on than everyone else, I had to dig, pretty deep down in there. And for the most part, I might be looking at a couple of guys that aren't even getting drafted in some formats. The first one that I really like, and Billy, I know you've talked about him before, is Hayden Hurst. Who's now going to be the full-time starting tight end for the Bengals. He's his FFWC ADP right now is at 195, so he's tight end 21. So he's not being drafted probably in some leagues, but otherwise he's just being targeted as a backup, and part of his NFL career for the most part, he's actually been a backup. He played behind Mark Andrews, and then the Falcons drafted Kyle Pitts, so he wasn't given a lot of opportunity, but he still caught 56 of 88 targets for 571 yards and 6 touchdowns when he was the full-time starter in 2020 for the Falcons. He was tight end 9 overall, believe it or not. I know that was 2 long years ago, but people, forget about that. So he'll be taking over for a role last year that was CJ Uzomah's. Last year, Uzomah wasn't featured quite as much. He was tight end 19 overall, but he did see 63 targets. What I like about Hurst, again, he had a nice showing 2 years ago when he finally got the chance to be the full-time starter. And even last year, with limited playing time, he had the 9th highest quarterback rating among all tight ends when he was targeted. What's funny about that is CJ Uzomah was actually 5th in that metric. So as a fit in the Cincinnati system here, should be a pretty good one for Hurst. His usage, he's lined up only 43% of his snaps with the Falcons were actually as an inline tight end. That'll probably go up a little bit here with the Bengals. But what I like about Hurst is not only is that discounted price, is that I feel like he's going to get a lot more opportunities, probably closer to the line of scrimmage, because you've got Joe Burrow, one of the best quarterbacks in the game, but Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, that's a lot for the opponent to worry about. It's going to leave opportunities for Hayden Hurst to see lesser coverages. And I feel like in my evaluation, my look at his stats, I feel like 75 to 80 targets is probably very realistic, maybe even a little on the low side. And if you're getting that many targets, that would have ranked in the top 15 among tight ends just last year. So by me looking at things, it won't be a stretch for Hurst to actually approach tight end one numbers in this offense. And like I said, going as the 21st guy, there's almost no downside to snagging him towards the end of all your drafts.
Tell me, where is he at in inside the projections, or just the first run? Do we have that number?
I believe he is at tight end 14, 15, somewhere in that range. Let me pull it up here.
Just found it. Tight end 22. But you're only talking about 3 to 4 points between tight end 17, 18 to tight end 22. So all within that same range. We have him there with Noah Fant, Njoku, Dawson Knox, who you might hear pop up on the show in a short bit where we talk about some of our other players. But still, I mean, he does present himself a value, and I would not be surprised if he outproduces that projection. That ADP, especially in drafts. Like, this is a high octane offense. This is a high powered offense, and if he's able to just take over the Uzomah role, and even if he's adding a little bit more inside the passing game, he's going to outproduce that tight end 22 projection of ours, I think.
Like you just said, just looking at just basic PPR numbers here, tight end 22, the difference between tight end 22 and tight end 15 is like 6 points. So you're talking 1 touchdown or 3 catches and 30 yards. So it's very, very close.
Yeah, very, very close.
That depth I hit on at the top of the show where I talked about the vast majority of that are going to probably wait on tight end. These are the kind of guys that I'm going to be wanting to target because, if you're going to go with a pair of cheap guys to rotate in and out of your lineup, he's the kind of guy that I'm wanting to locate there 18th round, 17th round, wherever I can get him.
Yeah, no, I like it. He's one of my most owned tight ends because everyone knows I'm a guy who pushes the tight end position down the board. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll mix in tight ends higher if I'm trying to diversify or I'm creating a unique build. But my normal draft philosophy and strategy is that you can always find value at the tight end position. And this year especially just seems to be a very deep tight end position. And I seem like I say that every year. And then we come into week one and there's injuries and there's more camp news and something happens. But this year, I truly feel like we're going to have a pretty deep position at the tight end, at tight end, and I think that we're going to be able to find a lot of value in drafts, especially in the fantasy world. Do you think that I would be able to go through this podcast without mentioning Cole Kmet's name for my first pick?
No, I didn't, but maybe some of the viewers might not have. Unless you're new to the show.
Yeah, if you're new to the show, then welcome. You're going to find out that I'm a Cole Kmet stan. But for those of you who already know me, Cole Kmet was never not going to make this list. So Cole Kmet is my first value pick at the tight end position. As of right now, he's actually been climbing up the boards. He's going as tight end 12 now in ADP at the FFWC. Last year, he finished as tight end 20 despite having 0 touchdowns. And that, to me, is not going to happen again. Weeks 12 through 18, though, he was tight end 11 during that stretch. Tight end 11. I mean, that's phenomenal. You see his uptick in his involvement in the passing game, his rapport that he built with Fields. All that was extremely brought to the forth with reason why he was able to hit that tight end 11 mark. We've talked about vacated targets time and time again on the show. It is one of the metrics that I love the most when identifying talent, identifying opportunity. And there's 217 vacated targets here for this Bears offense. That is 41.41% of the team's target share. And of those, 31 targets are available at the tight end position alone with the departure of Jimmy Graham. So with Graham out of the equation, that opens up more red zone opportunity as well, because that's where Jimmy Graham was featured last year. We look at the draft and we look at what they've done in free agencies. They've had no real wide receiver threats or even any tight end threats outside of undrafted rookie free agents. The only draft worth mentioning is going to be Velus Jones in the wide receiver position. So when you look at this team and what's going to happen in terms of targets, he has so many chances to succeed in this offense. And if you look back at 2021 and his offense and his statistics, he was tight end 9 in air yards. We expect that to go up now with more opportunities. He was tight end 6 in snap share. We expect that to go up with nobody else there to steal it from him. Tight end 5 in contested catch rate. That's a good stat. Will hopefully stays the same. Tight end 5 in contested catch rate at 46%. That was the number. Tight end 5 in contested catches is what I meant to say. Tight end 15 in target separation. And I think that we're going to continue to see just more and more growth inside the snap shares, the routes ran, and all the metrics that are going to be really important for his efficiency to continue. So I am extremely bullish on Cole Kmet. You know it. Everyone on this damn show knows it. But I had to throw his name here for my first one.
Yeah, and I've been in agreement with you on that. In my initial projections, he actually is a top 12 tight end. So I'm anticipating tight end 1 numbers. And I want to say we hit on this, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago. But so 0 touchdowns last year, which that's not going to happen again. But even if you gave him a measly 3 touchdowns last year, which is probably a little lower than he should have had, he would have put up the same overall tight end numbers as TJ Hawkinson. So,
oh yeah, is that good?
I think it's acceptable. I think I'd be okay with it.
We have a question in here in the chat. I'm looking it up as we go so I can actually speak to it. But can you read that question for me so I can stall and I can find the answer?
My way off thinking Graham had 10 end zone targets last year.
End zone.
It probably sounds right. He wasn't playing much.
I can't spell Graham apparently.
Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, it's not showing anywhere on advanced tight end metrics here, so I don't see end zone. Doesn't pop up. We could check red zone.
Yep, is that what we're? Oh, end zone targets. Is that what he said?
Is end zone or red zone? Hold up, I gotta expand outside of. I think it does non-qualifiers. So let me add non-qualifiers here. End zone. Jimmy Graham had 5 end zone looks and 8 red zone looks, but 5 end zone looks is still a decent amount. Yeah, it wasn't popping up because he was underneath the qualified target numbers. So there it is: 5 end zone, 8 red zone looks. That's the answer, Wheeler. All right, who's your number 2 here, Jody?
Well, how about a guy that's going even later than Hayden Hurst, which is kind of odd when you consider that in terms of fantasy points per game, he was tight end 8 last season, and he was tight end 7 in that metric in 2020. I'm talking about Logan Thomas. Back in 2020, he actually had 110 targets for Washington. He was 3rd among all tight ends that season. With Ricky Seals-Jones now gone to New York, there's not much that's going to be in the way of Thomas playing a full-time role for Washington. John Bates right now is the number 2 tight end, and he is used more as a inline blocker. But so Thomas, one of the reasons that I really like Thomas in this is the Carson Wentz. Now I know Carson Wentz has his falls and all that, but there are some things that Carson Wentz is actually pretty good at. He's actually a pretty efficient red zone passer when you look at his numbers and all that. But one thing that Carson Wentz has done is he has funneled a lot of targets to his tight ends over the year. I went back and looked at Carson Wentz's career. Now, granted, he was playing a lot of time with good tight ends in Philadelphia. But back in 2016, Zach Ertz had 106 targets. 2017, Ertz had 110. 2018, led the team with 116 targets. 2019, he led the team once again with 135. And last 2020, Ertz in 11 games, he was hurt. But him and Dallas Goedert combined for 138 targets. And even last year, when Ertz was in Indianapolis, the ragtag duo of Jack Doyle, Mo Alley-Cox, Kylan Granson still combined for 103 targets. So I feel like Logan Thomas is probably in a good position where he is going to once again approach triple-digit targets. Now, I'm also figuring he's probably going to get more opportunities shorter to the closer to the line of scrimmage, maybe even more snaps in line, which is something that he didn't do much last year. Only 20% of his snaps were actually in line last year. But with a healthy Curtis Samuel playing along with Jayon Doctson now joining the lineup, things are going to open up a little bit for Washington. And it just feels like to me, like I said, my numbers probably aren't there yet, but after I did this more research, I'm probably going to have to tweak some things up with Thomas, because I think he's got a pretty good path to, even if the role declines a little bit, he's still an 85 target guy. I easily, like I said, triple digit targets is within grasp. And looking at his FFWC ADP, 205 overall. He's tight end 22, so he's going one spot after Hayden Hurst. Again, an approach when a lot of us are forced to do these cheap combos at tight ends, or we're taking flyers, or maybe even going with three guys in the later part of the draft. Hurst, Logan Thomas, these are low-cost guys that I see, a ton of cheap production from, nothing but upside. And, you're throwing out a flyer pick in the 18th, 19th, 16th, 20th round, whatever. There's nothing but upside from targeting these kind of guys that late. And it's an approach that I generally almost always end up taking, because it feels like, Billy, every time I do a draft or mock, whatever it is, and I do take a chance on a top 4 or 5 tight end, I always regret it, because I always get down to like 6th, 7th, or 8th round, and I'm still trying to fill out my flex spot. I'm still trying to figure out who my wide receiver 3 is going to be. And I'm generally never happy with the way my lineups look when I do that. And last year, I actually found myself doing that quite a bit, except unfortunately, it was Darren Waller who I kept kind of targeting. And I think it was around 5 last year when he would slide, I'd go ahead and snag him. And of course, he missed a significant portion of the year. So now that just makes me, I'm just more likely to go ahead and try to target these late round guys once again in this year, because like I said, it blew up in my face last year. But it just, I never am happy with my teams when I actually prioritize tight ends. So I'd rather just load up on more valuable positions and just take these late round flyers on these cheap guys.
So does the ACL injury scare you? I mean, he tore his ACL last year, week 13, December 5th, against Seattle Seahawks. The average return time in the NFL is anywhere from 10 to 13 months. They are saying right now that they are shooting for a week 1 return. It doesn't sound optimistic at this point. If he were to miss the beginning part of the season, where does that move him in your rankings? I think right now in projections, he's currently sitting at tight end 15. If we were to catch news that he's going to miss 2 or 3 games, right, does that change your opinion?
Of course. I'm cautiously optimistic that he will, be ready for week 1. Athletes now every year seems like these guys are recovering from these kind of injuries a lot faster. Of course, I was thinking the same thing about Chris Godwin, and it's starting to look, kind of bad there. But again, this is why these guys are. I look at them as values this late, because you have that opportunity to sit back and, if news, obviously, hopefully, you're not drafting this early. I know some of us are, but it. Like I said, it's so cheap. Wide receiver. I mean, you're probably going with a committee at this point anyway. So it's around 18, 19, 20. There's not a lot of downfall possibilities when you are spending this late draft capital on a guy. But it's obviously something we need to monitor. Like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. When I did my projections, I have him scheduled for the full slate, but we'll see. When we'll see things get a little more serious here in August, and we start getting reports, and we can have a better indication at that point.
So let's say that reports out he's finishing up camp. He's going to start week 1. Where do you think that moves him in projections? I mean, or at least 8. Let's talk ADP. He's, like you said, he's going as tight end 22. Do you think that catapults him into the top 15, 17 if he's ready for week 1?
I don't think you'll see a lot of movement with him. Best case scenario, ADP wise, he might move up 3, 4, 5 spots. He might be going as tight end 17, 18. If he's actually out there taking reps and he's building a rapport with Carson Wentz, people might be like, okay, well, I'm gonna take a chance on this guy. But more likely than not, he's not really going to move up much. So he's got it's just I don't see him sliding that much. Now, if we conversely, if we enter training camp and he hasn't taken the field, or there's reports that he's going to miss even 1 or 2 weeks, then at that point you probably don't even draft him. He just becomes a priority waiver wire ad at that point moving forward. When he is able to get in the lineup, I expect he'll be a guy that you can deal with in your lineup as long as he's fully healthy. But
we have a question here from Roy, Stats Guru, who says, is Irv Smith going to reach his potential this season? I'll let you answer first, and I'll piggyback.
Potential, yes. I think we all kind of were really excited about Irv Smith, and it's starting to look like that we're all kind of jumping back on that horse again this year. He missed the entire season last year.
Yeah, he was out.
In preseason. So yeah, that was a little tough. That's a pretty good offense for him. Kind of curious of how this new look Vikings attack is going to go. I think he's got an outside shot at approaching tight end 1 number. So it just depends on what your definition of potential is. He's a guy that he's just like these other 2 guys, Hayden Hurst, Logan Thomas, these kind of late round guys. I want to say Irv Smith probably actually going ahead of both of them. And you can see why, but he's a guy that I want to have some exposure to in not as many drafts as I can, but he's a guy I want to throw in these rotations where I'm taking 2, or if I have a bigger roster, if I have 20 in my roster and I can afford somehow to roster 3 tight ends, he's one of the guys that I'm trying to sneak in there.
Yeah, coming out of college from Alabama, he was drafted at round 2, pick 18. Had some pretty good metrics, nothing like outstanding, but 4.6, 340 out of college. Burst score 102. Speed score 102, burst score 111.9. So had some decent metrics, but the Alabama college definitely bumped him up boards, I think. But the thing that I think that he is going to fall into, at least, I don't know if we're going to hit the potential, but he's going to be given every opportunity to succeed, is, again, going back to vacated targets, 111 on the team, 19% on this offense, 96 of those 111. 86% of those vacated targets are all at the tight end position. So that was Conklin's role, right? So with Conklin out of the equation, Irv Smith is going to be giving every opportunity to succeed in this offense. So there's a lot of targets for him to kind of eat up here.
Yeah, Conklin was actually, moderately usable last year on a week-to-week basis. I'm going to look up his numbers real quick. What did he end up as? Points per game, he was tied in 19. So, again, he's right in that wheelhouse of these rotational situations that I keep hitting on. So, yeah, you can deal with that.
All right, my last sleeper / target late in drafts for the tight end position is going to be Austin Hooper. And this one is going to be purely opportunity-based because you look at his metrics from the time he was with the Browns, and it's ugly. It's not pretty at all. But if you date it back to 2019, when he was in Atlanta, when he was used properly, tight end 6 in total yards, 787 yards. Tight end 11 in snap share, which I expect to see similar numbers in snap share here, if not more, here on the Tennessee offense. Tight end 9 in air yards, tight end 3 in true catch rate, tight end 3 in contested catches, tight end 13 in contested catch rate. He's separation-wise tight end 5 with 1.97. And right now in drafts at FFWC, he's going as tight end 24, which is a steal to me because we have mentioned Tennessee Titans time and time again with vacated targets. 336 vacated targets here in Tennessee, 64% of their target share. 63 of those targets, or 18% of them, are all at the tight end position. So when you look at his opportunity and he's already building rapport with Tannehill, you're starting to hear from beat writers that they're connecting on passes, that they're showing good chemistry together. Plus, you look at Bob Woods recovering from an injury as well. You have the rookie struggles with Treylon Burks right now. Outside those two, the only other receiver really worth mentioning on the team is going to be Nick Westbrook-Akeen, and I don't even know if it's really worth mentioning, but that's the next person in line. So Austin Hooper should have a really damn good role this year as the tight end inside Tennessee.
Yep, and again, he's in that same range. I keep talking about these guys that are in the the upper 20s. Nothing but value. My current projections, I have him right there at wide receiver 21, which is about where he's being drafted. But again, that's all of 5 or 6 points away from being tight end 15. So it's just a real deep group of guys that are very, very short packed. And like you said, Hooper, when actually incorporated into the offense in Atlanta, was actually you went over the numbers. He was actually pretty good. So
that's why he got the contract he did in Cleveland. Was because he was very productive. Cleveland just misused him. They had Baker throwing the ball. There was a lot of dysfunction in that offense, that system, that organization. So a new team, a new coach, a new quarterback, I think should do him well. So I'm pretty excited to see his 2022 production. Moving along, let's go into two tight ends that we are lower on the consensus, and I'm going to start off with this one and say my first one. I said you might hear his name earlier, and that is going to be Dawson Knox. Last year, Dawson Knox was extremely touchdown dependent. How much? 18.3 touchdown rate last year, which is just unheard of at the tight end position, plus unsustainable. When you compare it to other tight ends like Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, Andrews had a 9% touchdown rate. Kelce had a 10% touchdown rate. And you say, okay, well, that was all target-based. Well, let's compare him to another great tight end, and Kittle. Kittle had an 8.5% touchdown rate. So 18.3% touchdown rate, in my opinion, is just unsustainable, and it's not going to be repeatable here in 2022. You add in the competition for targets with the addition of O.J. Howard at the tight end position, also Jamison Crowder, and you start to wonder now, is he going to get the target share that is going to be needed for him to be drafted as a tight end 1 is where he's going in drafts right now. Last year, he finished as tight end 11 in fantasy points. And then right now, he is going in. I didn't write that down, actually. Where's he going in drafts? So Knox is actually tight end 10 right now in FFWC drafts. A little rich for my blood, considering everything I just mentioned. You look at his catch rate, 84%. It's tight end 21. So there's a lot of opportunity here. Or not opportunity, a lot of different ways for him to fail, or at least not present himself as a good candidate for a return on investment when you consider all of the above. So I expect touchdown regression. I do not expect an 18.3% touchdown rate again. If he dips to that 9 range, you're talking about 9%, even 10%. That's 4 touchdowns on his 40 plus targets last year. You just cut his touchdowns by more than half. So I have a lot of concerns when it comes to Dawson Knox here in this offense. Yes, it's an elite offense. Yes, they're pushing the ball down the field. Yes, they're going to be in the red zone. But I just have concerns for him to repeat those numbers.
Total agreement. And the guy I'm going to talk about, I'm glad that you actually talked about Dawson Knox first, because they're going to be in a similar regard with just being so dependent on touchdowns. But I'm kind of curious if what's going to happen with Knox now, with Gabriel Davis emerging in Buffalo, with Jamison Crowder, who in my opinion is probably an upgrade over what Cole Beasley was able to do for them last year. So, you've got James Cook in the backfield, potentially taking even more targets away. So, again, our initial look at tight end, he was nowhere near tight end 1 territory. I think I've got him around tight end 18 right now. And to be honest, that feels a bit low, because there is an outside chance that he still could play that red zone role. I mean, I suppose it's not out of the question. He could get 6, 7, 8 touchdowns yet again. I'm not really anticipating it, to be honest, but it's probably something I need to, that will be addressed as we start to see some things play out here, this summer. But I'm in agreement on Knox. He's not someone that I'm planning on rostering hardly anywhere this year.
This is the thing that scares me with Knox. Okay, week 2, two receptions, one of them's a touchdown. Week 3, 4 receptions, one of them's a touchdown. Week 4, 5 receptions, 2 of them are touchdowns. Week 5, 3 receptions, 1's a touchdown. Week 12, 3 total targets, 2 of them are touchdowns. Like, that is not sustainable. That you can't repeat those numbers week in and week out. Like, you are extremely touchdown dependent, and it's going to be so hard to repeat that.
Agreed.
All right, who's your first one on your fades?
Another guy that basically another AFC East tight end that basically had the exact same 18% target rate, and who I think has an unsustainable role, and that's Hunter Henry. He was tight end 8 last year, thanks mostly to those 9 touchdowns that he caught, but he was only 18th among all tight ends with 75 targets. And 33% of his entire PPR production came from those 9 touchdowns. What's crazy about Henry is on the weeks when he scored, yeah, you probably did okay. But, okay, let's look at some things here. He only had more than 50 receiving yards 3 times. 50. Only 3 times the entire year did he even exceed 50 yards. He had 13 games where he was 40 or under. That's nuts. Because you're basically, it's touchdown or nothing with him. He had 10 games with single-digit PPR scoring. So that's hard to sustain. And right now I have some serious concerns about New England's offense. Like, we don't know what's going on over there. Who's going to be calling their plays? I mean, Matt Patricia, come on, is that serious? They're saying Matt Patricia, who was a disaster and is a defensive guy, they're saying he could call plays for the Patriots. Or what about Joe Judge? I mean, the Giants were routinely awful under Joe Judge. These are the kind of guys that might be calling the plays in New England. That's worrisome for me. And then also look at the Patriots. They've got more options that are going to be potentially taking even more targets away from Hunter Henry. You got a healthy James White returning. Tyquan Thornton, they just drafted. They traded for Devontae Parker. And they've got to figure out how they're going to use, considering the salary, they got to figure out better ways to use Jonnu Smith, who actually, even though he had fewer targets, he was actually more productive when you look at some of the efficiency numbers when he's targeted. So these are 4 potential guys that are possibly going to take more targets away from Henry. His FFWC ADP, he's tight end 13 right now. It's a little rich for my blood, but like I said, it's that whole – the touchdown regression. I mean, it's just fair to assume the guy's not going to repeat an 18% touchdown rate or get 1/3 of his entire PPR production from touchdowns. And when you take away, if you get him back down to 5 or 6 touchdowns instead of 9, then he drops out of the top 15, which is about, where I'm going to have him. I'm going to have him somewhere in that 14 or 15 range, but he's just a guy that if he falls, I don't have a problem targeting him. I thought tight ends, overall, the ECR, the rankings that are out there are pretty sharp. So it's not like I'm going out of my way and saying under no circumstances should you draft him. No, at some point he becomes, a solid value. But I'm just saying expectations should probably be, a little lower for Henry this year. And he's not a guy that, he'd have to fall out of where he is. He'd have to fall lower than the tight end 13, 14 range he's going right now for me to, take some chances on him.
So in projections right now, where do we have him? He is tight end 14, which I think is about right. You said he's being drafted as 13, so our projections are matching up there. I'm a little higher on Hunter Henry than you are, but there is a lot of concerns when it comes to his touchdowns. When I was doing my research with Dawson Knox, there was only one other tight end in the league who had an 18% touchdown rate when it came to the targets, and it was Hunter Henry. So the same argument could be laid in place for Hunter Henry. That being said, the Patriots always seem to involve the tight end, right? Whether it's in the red zone or across the seam. Like, I feel like they always get him involved somehow, some way. Yes, it wasn't to the level that we would like to see it last year, but as we see Mac Jones develop, I think that we're going to see them start to air the ball out maybe a little bit more than they did last year. But again, you brought up a lot of valid points when it comes to who's calling the plays and their previous failures on their previous teams. So there is a lot to be concerned about Hunter Henry. I'm kind of on the fence here. I like where he is versus players like Dawson Knox or even Tyler Higbee. There's a few other players in that range that I prefer Hunter Henry over, or I should say I prefer Hunter Henry over them, but I never feel good about pressing the button and taking him. We have a question here. Will the fantasy football community have a massive party when Bill Belichick retires? I don't know. I think if Bill Belichick retires, like, we could potentially be looking at a franchise that could become like the next Jets, right? Just a franchise that's going to take a long time to rebuild, find their next cornerstone piece in their coach. Like, this franchise, I think, is going to be a mess when Bill Belichick retires, in my opinion.
It was like the worst franchise in easily the worst franchise in the NFL before Belichick got hired. But, it was one of the worst in North American sports when you look at just how bad they were after they lost that Super Bowl in '85 to the Bears. They got destroyed. After that, they were just like abysmal.
And the way I look at it is Belichick has been, even though he sucks for fantasy purposes, in terms of NFL, like, his teams are disciplined. Like, they don't make errors. And that's what keeps the Patriots in it every single year, whether their roster is good or not. They don't make the errors that a lot of teams make, and that's why they're always in contention. That's why they're out here always competing. It's old, hard-nosed football. And if you remove him out of the equation, I think it's just going to be not only detrimental to the franchise, but detrimental to fantasy as well. So I will not be throwing a party when Bill Belichick retires. I'm going to be a little bit concerned when it comes to fantasy points. All right, my tight end 2 for my fade list this year, it's going to be Gesicki. Last year, he was tight end 8 in air yards. I don't expect that to continue with the addition of Tyreek Hill, with Waddle kind of breaking out. And then now you add in pass-catching back Chase Edmonds. You look last year, he had 111 targets. Again, I don't think that's repeatable with all those additions now on this team. There's a lot more mouths to feed here in this offense. Tight end 22 in target separation, so he clearly has separation concerns. Tight end 19 in contested catch rate, only caught 32% of those contested catches. Again, not a very good metric for a tight end. I mentioned earlier, tight end 8 in total yards, tight end 3 in air yards, over 1,000 air yards. Again, unrepeatable with the amount of additions in this offense. So Gesicki has been going in drafts at the FFWC. He has been going as tight end number 13 in drafts. Again, he's going in the range of Dawson Knox. He's going ahead of Rob Gronkowski right now, Albert O'Kay, Hunter Henry. These are all people who I would personally take ahead of Gesicki just based upon this offense. Plus, you look at the strength of schedule and utilizing the strength of schedule tool over at the full-time fantasy page. And we already know that the Miami Dolphins have the toughest, or one of the toughest, strength of schedules in the league. Let's pull up the tight end position. And the tight end position, where is it? Middle of the pack in terms of the total season, but if you get into fantasy playoffs, the shootout schedule, weeks 15 through 17, number 32. Toughest tight end schedule in the league using the full-time fantasy strength of schedule tool, which is a nice little tool if you haven't seen it. Head on over to Full-Time Fantasy, subscribe so you can use it. It's a great little just skim over, look at it real quick, and make sure that you're not selecting anyone who's going to be in danger come the shootout schedule. So that's who I'm adding, Gesicki. What's your thoughts on Gesicki?
Well, you remember last year, the big talk was, is it fair that Gesicki is even listed as a tight end because almost all of his snaps were out wide? Well, how's that going to happen this year? You've got Tyreek Hill. You've got Cedric Wilson, who they spent money to sign, Jalen Waddle, and like you said, Chase Edmonds, excellent pass-catching back. I don't see how the usage that Gesicki had last year split out wide is going to continue. I project he's going to play a lot more snaps from the slot, or maybe even in line, but it all boils down to opportunity. And I still don't have a ton of confidence into as a viable offense. They got plenty of weapons. He's going to have every opportunity to show here, but when it comes to volume, I don't see how he's going to match up or come in anywhere near that. I think our projections have Gesicki right around tight end 12 or 13, which is about, what you just said and all that. But, where he finished last year and where you see a lot of people still are targeting him around 10 or maybe even 9 or 11, somewhere in that range. And, again, he's not a guy I'm going to have a, ton of exposure to either.
Yeah, Trevor brings up a good point here and says McDaniels came from the Shanahan system. Now look at the RBS and a full fade on Big Mike this year for me. Yeah, the running backs are going to be a huge focus point here on this new offense. Plus, you look in the creative ways that they got Deebo Samuel the ball, and you have Jalen Waddle who can do a lot of the similar things. Tyreek Hill who can do a lot of similar things. This team has speed. They don't need Gesicki now to put up 1,000 air yards or 780 yards on the field. I think we're going to see a very reduced role here for Gesicki in 2022.
Yeah.
You know what? I see the next name on here on your list, and I just want to say I'm very sad that you added him on this list.
You know what? I'm going to say this. I couldn't come up with anyone. I could not come up with another tight end that I felt like was egregious or a guy under no circumstances would I draft. And again, I like Albert Okwuegbunam just fine. But I feel like at tight end 12, which is where his FFWC ADP is, it feels like it's a little high, for me. And I'm looking at Russell Wilson's recent history has been a quarterback that funnels his targets to his wideouts. When you look over the last few years, that's what Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are all, 100 to 120 targets a year. Now, granted, Seattle didn't have, very dependable tight ends on their roster, and they weren't really incorporated into the offense. Maybe that'll be different with Denver, but you have a legitimate 3 wide receivers in Denver with Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. Plus, you have 2 extremely good pass-catching running backs. Going back to Seattle, the highest. I'm looking. You have to go back to 2017 to see a Seattle tight end finish higher than 20th in targets or in fantasy points, and that was Gerald Everett. Again, Albert O. He's really interesting to watch. He made a ton of big plays despite playing behind as a tight end too. I mean, another thing I'm looking at is Greg Dulkich. They just spent a 3rd rounder on him. I don't know how much he's going to be used right away, but Bill, you're pointing some stuff here, in front of me that yes, Denver has a very good schedule for tight ends. Again, I'm not telling people I had trouble coming up with any tight ends that I felt like were bad. I just see him at tight end 12. It seems a little high for me. I think my numbers, where are they? They have him down at right below it. I have it at tight end 13. Again, tight end is spot on. If you want to talk about these hit points on sell, Albert O, it's fine. He's just, he's not a guy that I'm going to go out of my way to draft a lot. If he falls in my lap, great, but it hasn't happened yet.
You have to delay here. You have to give me some time. I'm looking up arguments here for Albert. Okay, I love him, but I need statistics. You got to give me 2 more minutes. Got to rant 2 more minutes. You got to buy me time here.
Okay. The main point is, like I said, I had an extremely difficult time going through all the tight ends and just finding guys that I thought Hunter Henry was an easy fade for me. That one was easy to come up with, but I really struggled to come up with other guys, and I didn't want to go down at like tight end 25 or 24, because at that point, I mean, what's the point of even saying, oh, you should fade him? Because, I mean, it's so cheap. He's not even being drafted, some guys. My main thing here is looking at Russell Wilson's recent history and how he distributed targets in Seattle. Granted, totally different situation, different offense, but you got a deep supporting cast in Denver. I don't know that he's going to get enough opportunities to live up to tight end 12. We'll see. But like I said, he's not a guy that I'm going out of my way to target at all.
Trevor agrees with you, but I'm going to lay out a couple stats and see. I just did my frantic lookup here to add some statistics to give devil's advocate, because I have been drafting Albert OK like a madman because I like the offense. I love all the weapons here. I think regardless of the coaching staff, he's going to have involvement. You watch him running routes right now, and it looks like a wide receiver out there on the field. And anytime I have a wide receiver at the tight end position, it's always a benefit. You look at the shootout schedule, 14th easiest, which is, okay, middle of the pack. Second easiest for regular season. You mentioned that earlier. Tight end 3 in target separation. That goes back to what I just said in relation to him running routes as a receiver. He looks like a receiver out here running routes. So that shows in the metrics inside of his statistics when he's having number 3. 2.3 is the number. So tight end 3 in target separation. True catch rate, 91.7 at tight end 7, and then this is the other one, yards per route, tight end 3. So, man, I like Alberto. I can't say his last name like you just did, so I'm just going to say A-OK. I like A-OK. I'm going to be drafting him. Okay, I love him.
Let me ask you this. Are you taking him ahead of Zach Ertz?
No, I'm not.
Dallas Goedert?
No.
Pat Freiermuth?
50-50.
And your boy Cole Kmet?
50-50.
Okay, so I know you love him and all that, but again, then you're only 50-50 on guys that we currently have ranked 10th and 11th. So it's hard for him to go up much higher.
Yeah, I get that. But in drafts,
again, I watched more of him today. You're right. He does great at creating separation. He makes a lot more downfield plays for a guy that was playing as a tight end 2 for a team last year. And you're talking about a team with a very below average quarterbacking last year. He still was able, as the second tight end, to make plenty of plays. There's a lot to like about him. It just, again, it comes down to, I don't know. I don't know how the target distribution, where's he going to rank in the pecking order? I'm viewing him as at best 4th, but he could be as low as 6th in targets if they keep involving the running game, the running backs like they were.
So what if so right now drafts, you mentioned tight end 12, recent ADP now he's slid to tight end 16 in FFWC drafts. Does that interest you more?
Sure. Oh yeah. Because I know, again, because I just said the other guys that are in that range, and I agree with you. I wouldn't take him ahead of Ertz, Goddard, Freiermuth. I might take the guy that's an hour projection that's right above him is Gesicki, and you had some great points on him and how I don't really care for Gesicki either. So at that point, I stopped considering him. But what's interesting is right behind Albert O is my guy that I just talked about in Hunter Henry. So at that point, that's the tight end 13, 14 range. So yeah, sure. If his ADP, maybe I was looking at last week's numbers or last month's numbers. I don't know. But maybe I was looking at something different. But I had it as tight end 12. So if he's at 16, yeah, certainly I'm more interested. But like I said, man, tight end sharp. There wasn't a lot that stood out to me as really, really egregious. So I had to figure. I know you like him, so I'm like, well, we got to have an interesting talking point. I can't just come on here and tell people they should fade Evan Ingram because Jacksonville sucks, because nobody wants to hear that.
So Trevor says something here, and I just want to tell Trevor he's already had too much scotch, because he's saying that Albert O is going to take the blocking assignments and Dulcich is going to line up, i.e. Gronk style. How many shots do you think he's deep on scotch right now? Over, under on 6. Or glasses. How many glasses? Over, under on 4.
You watch UCLA film, there's a lot to like about him, but expecting an immediate role for a rookie tight end is always a risky proposition at best.
I'm going to take the over on glasses of scotch for Trevor tonight on 4.
Hit it up, Trev.
He said half bottle of wine, so that's after the 4 glasses of scotch. So there we go.
Mean bottle or box?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's not that bad.
He says he knew it would fire me up. We have a couple questions in here from Stats Guru. What's your opinion on Robert Tonyan this year?
Actually, I kind of adjusted his numbers up a little bit. It feels like we're all like mad at him, last year because he was so good in 2020 with all them touchdowns, and he just completely became abysmal last year. But your favorite talking point, Billy, is vacated targets, and it sounds like things have started off a little rough during the first little appearance for the new wideouts, and of course that's to be expected. So he's being drafted so late, and in some cases I don't think he's even being drafted at all. That he's certainly in that category where I've talked about, if I have expanded rosters, if I can waste a roster spot on the third tight end, he's got wouldn't mind having some pieces of.
So you look at strength of schedule, 29th most difficult. So it's one of the toughest schedules for tight ends in the league for Robert Tonyan in Green Bay. You look at the shootout schedule, weeks 15 through 17. He's at the 25th most difficult schedule as well. So again, another very tough schedule in the shootouts as well. Vacated targets, we just mentioned it. 42% of the targets are available, 241 in this offense. Though, do you want to guess how many are available at tight end?
Tight end targets available, probably not many.
0.
Yeah, they're bringing back him and Mercedes Lewis. So
yeah, everybody is back. So when you look at the piece of the pie, he might just be eating out of the same pie he was eating at before. And yes, he may pick up a few of the targets that were left on the field from the wide receiver core, but with all the additions at the position, it might be tough for him to have a significant role. That being said, he is a favorite target in the end zone when it comes for Aaron Rodgers when Davante Adams was not on the field. We saw all of his success, or most of his success, I should say. I shouldn't say all. Most of his success was when Davante Adams was off the field in his big games. So that being said, he may be a trusted target in the end zone. Maybe we see something similar to like a tail end of Jimmy Graham's career when he was just a red zone threat and used less down the seam and less in between the 20s. So I don't have the faith or the confidence in Robert Tonyan, but I think if you're building like a 0 tight end team and you're just going pure dart throws at the end of the draft and you're looking to get 3 in best ball or whatever it may be, I think you could do worse. So sure, go for it. I'm not comfortable doing it though. Scott says he's no Jermichael Finley. That's right. Last question of the night before we ended it here. Why is everyone looking Conklin and just assuming Uzomah is the guy in New York? Or why isn't anyone looking at Conklin, I think is what he meant to say. This is actually a good question. So we look at early reports from beat writers, and it seems to be Conklin is the favorite inside the passing game for the tight end position, where Uzomah has been used more as a pass blocker. So it has not been like massively reported, but if you look at beat writers and the information coming out of camp, is Conklin's been used in the passing game. What does that mean though for the Jets, right? We have a quarterback who struggled mightily last year, who we're hoping takes a step forward. They added a dynamic running back in the backfield. They added Wilson in the draft. They still have more. They still have Corey Davis. There's a lot of different options in this offense, and there really isn't the volume that you would expect from like someone like Buffalo or somebody like Kansas City or even Green Bay, where they're going to be super efficient and accurate. So I think Conklin is a sneaky addition right now in drafts. I've been adding quite a bit of them, especially in best ball as like a third option. I'm not drafting him in redrafts because he's going undrafted. You'll be able to pick him up on waivers, but I do think that he is a sneaky addition, and I think that people should probably take a look at him. Anything else you want to add, Jody, before we end the call?
No, it feels. I was trying to look at Pro Football Focus's blocking grades last year. I could see that Uzomah was 44th among tight ends in pass blocking, so that may have a little more to say with that situation. But it'll probably be more of a rotation in New York. And you're talking about with Zach Wilson's struggles last year, it's hard to have a lot of confidence in either guy. But if they're doing, even if they're running more 12 sets, is there going to be enough targets for either one of them to be really significant? It's interesting point. I think it's good that you're paying attention to see that, why, because it's not like CJ Uzomah's ever been, a standout player or anything great. So it's something worth monitoring. It wouldn't be, a shock, I don't think, to anybody to see, Conklin come up with more snaps there. But again, I don't see a lot of, even if one of them emerges, the other one gets hurt and he plays full time, basically. I mean, I have a hard time seeing that offense producing a tight end that's significant week to week.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's it, folks. We're going to wrap it up tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Before you leave, though, Grind Time will not be recording tomorrow. I'm going to be getting ready as I am heading to the FSGA in Detroit. But next Friday, 6/17, I believe is the date. Yeah, 6/17. I want to do a live Grind Time Superflex Bowl draft. So if you're in here, I'm going to register as soon as this show ends. Hop on in the room with me. We'll get a live draft going. We'll get some live commentary again. Always a fun time to record with all of you. So look forward to that. Talk soon, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Take care.